I'm honored to be joined by Georgia State Senator Harold Jones. You may remember that Senator Jones was doing the examination of the lawyer for Trump's co-defendant, Ashley Merchant, at this hearing in the Georgia State Senate. Senator, I want to play you this portion that went mega viral here. And it was your questioning of Ashley Merchant, one of the lawyers in the RICO case representing Trump's co-defendant. And I want to get your reaction to it. But first, let's remind our viewers of what went down in the Georgia State Senate. Play this clip.
Ubers on each of these trips. There was a hotel at the beginning of the Royal Bahamans. I didn't include that. I didn't want to do the math. And I also did not want to.
How much does Ms. Willis make?
200 and something thousand a year.
So your argument is that a person who makes $200,000 a year is actually setting up prosecutions to go on a trip that costs $3,500. That's your argument.
No, not in isolation. I mean, you're talking about in isolation.
No, I'm not talking about in isolation. I'm talking about what's in briefs. I don't know what else you may be speculating about. I'm just talking about what's in briefs that says this is the benefit that she got. And all I'm saying is that I got a person who's making $200,000, and the benefit that you're putting into the briefs, not what you may say that you may find elsewhere, but the benefit in the briefs is I go on a trip with $3,300, $4,400. And they have made up all these prosecutions to go on a 3-day cruise for $3,300. I mean, that's your argument. If that's your argument, that's your argument.
That's not.
That's in the brief.
That's not our argument. So, we did argue for about 3 hours.
What else is in the brief?
What else is in the brief?
Yes.
A lot of facts, a lot of law.
No, as far as actual financial benefit.
So the financial benefit that I put in the brief was what I could prove. I did not want to have any, as you call it, speculation. I did not want to speculate about anything else. So I did not know if Mr. Wade paid for an Uber that Miss Willis was literally sitting in at the same time. You can kind of.
So Senator Jones, walk us through that moment and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so what we had was, we've been hearing about all these lavish trips and things of that nature. So one of the things, number one, had already kind of come out what the trips were. And so we got notice on Monday of that week that we'd actually be having Ms. Merchant come on. So her discovery was due. And so we were able to actually go up and look at the discovery. We didn't really have much time to do it. It was over 1,000 pages of discovery, quite frankly. But the main thing I wanted to make sure of was exactly what was being alleged as far as the trips were concerned. And so when you look at the amount of the trips, which I already kind of heard from the news, but I wanted to make sure. So we were able to see some of those receipts. And then, of course, that's also what's in her brief. And so the point was, and the point that I had really been kind of articulating to people for some time was that a person who makes over $200,000 would actually create these type of prosecutions, felony prosecutions, high profile prosecutions that can receive death threats and things of that nature to make these kind of trips that are actually taking place, which to most persons would be very minimal type trips, the 3-day cruises and things of that nature. It is not plausible that you're really trying to make that argument. And so I was very curious when I read the briefs and things of that nature to make sure that this is basically the financial benefit that they're actually claiming, that this is it, that this is the financial benefit that ought to be able to basically stop Ms. Willis from bringing this particular lawsuit or not bringing this particular action. And the key is, I want to make some other point there. It's really, and I'm even probably getting to the trap about calling it financial benefit. They had a relationship and they went on trips together. This is not a financial benefit in the more common sense of it, of someone actually just handing you money. They had a relationship and they went on a trip. Now, we can discuss whether it's bad judgment or not, 100%. But I think when we kind of do the narrative of financial benefit, we're making it seem as though they're having a prosecution to actually receive direct funds. They are in a relationship, or they were in a relationship. Part of any relationship would actually be that you actually go places together. That's just life. And so the danger to some extent of this whole argument to some extent is if you have a relationship, especially if you're a government employee, that some kind of way, if you have a relationship with another person in government, that some kind of way that's a financial benefit to you. And that was another part that I almost wanted to kind of bring out, but I kind of just stuck to where I was on that particular point.
You know, as I was watching these hearings, we were broadcasting it live here on the MeidasTouch network, and we had tens of thousands of people watching. In my commentary, I was like, Could we just talk about what the evidence is here on this issue of actual conflict? I don't want to hear about the sex lives of private individuals. Why are we? Show me what the actual conflict is. And now Judge Scott McAfee ruled that there is no actual conflict. All of the MAGAs are now saying this is rigged. Judge Scott McAfee worked for Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, so he was doing this as a favor to her. We're hearing all of that. Trump, of course, is fundraising off of this. First, let's just talk about the order by Judge Scott McAfee. What do you make of the ultimate ruling that there's no actual conflict? He said there may be an appearance of impropriety, which can be cured by Nathan Wade leaving the prosecution team.
Right. And I think the key language there is when he says there's no actual conflict. In fact, I'm actually I've given my opinion on some other places that the appearance of impropriety, to me, the rationale that he's using, it doesn't really cut mustard, so to speak, because his appearance is saying that the public, a reasonable person of the public, because these persons dated and because they may have had a trip, now may not basically have faith in the system or in the process. I understand what he's saying, but I don't think he's really, I think he's missing something there. Faith in the process is the process itself. Faith in the process is going to be there was a special grand jury. There was a grand jury. You have criminal defense attorneys. You have prosecutors. You're going to have a judge who's going to make decisions. What he basically is arguing is that when persons on the outside start saying, which they do all the time, especially now, well, this person knows this person, and that's why they're being prosecuted. Or this person worked for this person, and so therefore this prosecution is not any good. That's really what he's really kind of saying. Faith in the process is going to be when the case goes to trial and the defense attorneys get an opportunity to cross-examine persons, or they're able to put up direct evidence. When the judge makes determinations, let me tell you, and you know this, when that trial is going on, there are going to be persons online talking about all sorts of relationships. I don't even mean sexual relationships, but this person knew that person, this person went to law school with this person ran against this person. You can destroy faith in the process with all sorts of innuendo and speculation. And to some extent, I think that's what he's kind of relying on, that a reasonable member of the public would not believe that there's faith in the process because of what took place if they were dating at one particular point in time. No, faith in the process is the process itself. It's going to carry itself out. And I think he should rely on that to say, no, it's going to be the judge's rulings. It's going to be arguments by the prosecution, arguments by the defense. That's what's going to create faith in the process. But this idea that a reasonable member of the public, they're going to come up with all sorts of reasons why this process is not fair. You can't address all of those particular reasons.
I always said, look, we're dealing with a court of law, not a court of gossip, not a court of rumor, and not a court of innuendo. And it was always my commentary that there's really a double standard here. It's because who Fani Willis is, who Nathan Wade is, and on the other side, the fact that you have Trump and his co-defendants, that this was even allowed to take place and have hearings like this. What's your view on that? Do you see a double standard at play here?
Absolutely. What I would think would happen in most trials is the judge would have said, give us your brief. Let's just deal with the brief that was given, would have read it, saw what the supposed financial benefit was, and said, I've read the briefs based on the case law, which talks about an actual conflict, harm to the defendant, would ask the attorneys what harm has actually come to your particular client. As she said, then there really has been no harm. In fact, was made an offer to actually end the particular case for a misdemeanor. And the judge was saying, I understand your point, but I'm going to overrule it. And of course, you can take me up if you want to. And that would have been the extent of it. We would have not had this type of hearing if certain parties were not involved. I think he may have been saying, well, I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to air things out. But I think it ought to be treated like all cases are treated. And that's exactly how it would have been treated and should have been. It's not that it's being unfair. There just was no actual conflict here. And just imagine, and what the judge cited, the cases that he cited to say no actual conflict was in both parties' briefs. Was the fact on the trips, that was in both parties' briefs. You did not have to have all this other evidence. And what was it, 2 or 3 days worth of evidentiary hearings come out? You didn't need that. You could have asked the attorneys, state in your place, do you actually have any other evidence than what's in your brief? And it might have been, well, we want to put this person on, and they're going to say, I'm asking you, do you actually have any other financial benefit than what's in your brief? No, I don't. Okay, here's going to be my ruling. Let's move on.
And Senator, we hear a lot of commentators talking about polls, what they believe is happening on the ground in Georgia. You represent Augusta, Georgia as a state senator. What are you seeing people are talking about here in this election season? What are the issues that people are concerned about? And how do you evaluate the kind of current dynamic at play right now?
I think the current dynamic is persons are somewhat tired on some level of politics in general, but they're getting more engaged again now. And so where you see some of the polls show that President Biden may be behind, but what I'm seeing on the ground is persons are becoming more energized. They're getting ready to really start the process and start going out there and working. One of the major issues that are affecting the state of Georgia, Georgia is only one of 10 states now that has not expanded Medicaid. We're still trying to push that this year, and we're still got 2 weeks to do that left in our session, and we're actually trying to make sure that takes place. That is huge for us. 400,000 Georgians are not insured, and so we want to make sure that takes place. And so that was one of the points that I was also making, is that we're taking time away from doing that type of work, which is very important, to actually engage in a process, this process here that we really have no control over. It's nice for the media and things of that nature, but that hearing that we have of Ms. Merchant has no effect on the Georgia Senate. We have no control over those prosecutors. We have no control over that particular process. It really, quite frankly, it was a waste of time. And apparently we're going to continue to do them. So we'll see how that takes place. But I think what you're going to find out is Georgia is going to be a huge battleground state. And there's going to be many issues that are going to be extremely important. Number one, I think healthcare reform is going to be important if we're not able to get Medicaid expansion through this year. Secondly, also criminal justice reform is always tremendously important. One of the things we're seeing Republicans do now is actually go back to the old days. We're going back to mandatory minimums. We're going back to actually expanding RICO charges and things of that nature. And that is something that my constituents are especially concerned about.
You know, one of the things that makes this election and this overall dynamic in the country, I think, very interesting is that I think this whole paradigm of Democrat v. Republican, progressive, liberal v. conservative has kind of been turned on its head by MAGA. And you look at a purple state like Georgia, where to me, I look at these issues in a very different way than how the media portrays it. To me, I'm looking at democracy. I'm looking at normalcy. I'm looking at, is someone following the facts? I don't want just kind of the craziness and chaos that we saw when Trump was in office. And I just want common sense solutions and people who are offering bipartisan solutions, whether it comes to wages, whether it comes to healthcare, protecting and preserving Social Security, protecting women's reproductive rights. And on the other hand, you probably see a lot of your colleagues who identify as MAGA. All they do is talk about, oh, it's so unfair for Trump. It's so unfair. He's a billionaire. I mean, give me a break. It's so unfair. I mean, the party, and you must have noticed this, was always like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, have become the biggest just whiners in the world. And so as we kind of close out this interview, are you seeing that dynamic at play?
Absolutely. It's much tougher at times to be more bipartisan. One of the things I felt when I did the hearing last week was I got a tremendous amount of phone calls. Wasn't quite death threats. Well, actually, someone said, I need to watch my back as I walk out the front door. So I guess this sort of a death threat. But my admin couldn't even answer the phone anymore. We stopped answering the phone probably up until yesterday because there was so many threats and comments, negative comments, extreme negative comments are based upon that. So it's much harder to have that kind of bipartisanship, not on our end, especially being the minority, but I think from the majority standpoint, because they have all of these persons out there that just refuse to allow them almost to actually be bipartisan, to where the concept of you talking to a Democrat to some extent is very foreign. And it's sad that we've gotten to that point. First got elected solicitor back in 2004 and then went on to the Senate. So I've been in politics quite a long time, and I haven't never seen it this bad before. I've prosecuted persons, even though it was misdemeanor prosecutions, and I would see them in a restaurant and maybe even put them in jail. I've never had a person threaten me or say I better watch my back as I walk out of my front door. And this threat is because I basically just did a cross-examination of an attorney that you don't know, you have nothing to do with the state of Georgia, but you're so invested in Trump that you actually make a threat to another person. We've gone much further than I've ever seen.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you just focusing on the facts and saying, I just want to be clear. This is what your argument is, just so we know what it is. And when I saw that, I wanted to make sure everybody got to see that. I wanted to make sure everybody got to meet you. State Senator Harold Jones, thank you for joining us. We hope you come back again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Make sure you hit subscribe, everybody. We're on our way to 3 million subscribers here on the MeidasTouch Network. Have a wonderful day.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.